finances. It just comes down to, having somebody in that role that's, that has the time, or they're being, compensated for it. It's an expensive place to live. And so, the people that are within hockey are spread too thin. Like, I coached 3 teams last year. Like, it was just ridiculous. So, I think that's a big consideration now. You're trying to get people that have been in the game and that have coached the game, try to give back to it. But they're, as I say, they're spread pretty thin, but it's definitely needed, Wally.
Okay. I guess I'm curious here, Tom. You're the only person you've always coached. Have you mentored Tom before?
I did it with that Cochrane group for a while, but I didn't enjoy it because if the coach doesn't ask you, I found they kind of thought that you were a secret supervisor going to report on him or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I have you mentored me for years and years, but I ask you.
Yeah.
I just, I think the process has got to be changed somehow so that coaches can meet a whole bunch of people and say, somehow that the coach asks the person to be there, or else maybe some table of contents or something about the different mentors and what their kind of specialty is.
Yeah.
So if, a coach needs help on some tactical thing, you get in touch with that person, and team building another person. I don't know. It's a tricky thing when people are, so like the last time I was with the Royals, they told me I'm going to have this mentor of somebody that was assistant coach for major junior 15 years ago, but he was on vacation. And I'm sitting there thinking, what's he going to do for me? Like, hasn't even been in the game for 15 years. And to put people that you don't know. So it's a tough one. I try to mentor. I have 6,600 people on my site here. Ice hockey coaching youth to pro. So I kind of do a general mentorship there. And I just posted your breakout with the goalies passing.
Yeah.
Your practice, and then the way I like to do 6-on-5. So.
Yeah. I guess my question, like Tom, in your case, the only reason I got involved was not to offer anything to you, but to protect you. I found my role as a mentor was just to keep the wolves off the backs of the coaches, because there's so much criticism going on behind the scenes. Everybody's an expert, and you're always faced with those criticisms that can be really stressful for a coach. So I have to admit,
especially at that quadrant hockey, because everybody thinks, that is the first step to being in the NHL, and they don't actually know what you're doing, but you're not doing what they think, but they're also not very expert. So,
well, I'm going to ask everybody for some feedback here. I've made an application to the Southwest Athletic Association in Calgary. What they've done here, Tim, for the first time, each quadrant has created 3 so-called elite Pee-wee hockey teams, U13, because the quadrant level is your competitive level of hockey, your AA, AAA, and your community hockey. The kids are looking for a more competitive and serious atmosphere. So I've made an application, and Tom, you know the organization. I know the president. He's asked me, I think, more as a courtesy to make an application. And so I did. And I think it's an opportunity at that level where it's not as out of focus as the AAA level, and the shortening of the bench is the biggest concern. And I don't know that there's any old school abusive coaching going on today, but I still hear stories about that. But is there any of you got any advice for me if you were going to mentor 3 teams in a quadrant in a typical AAA association, what would you suggest?
Well, Wally, I would suggest what I just talked about is give them a table of contents kind of a thing, okay? And
Yeah.
say, okay, so the coach asks you, can you help me with a power play? Can you help me with a power check? And the coach asks you to come and do stuff instead of you being there as, kind of like they just feel threatened with a guy just being there because the Royals have sent them there, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that would make the coaches more relaxed and saying, yeah, I asked for that. What do you think, Tim and Dom?
Dominic, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, there's always that little bit of, you're always second guessing yourself a little bit there. So, I just say if you were to give them, say, hey, listen, these are the elements that I can help out on. I agree with that. I agree with what Tom's saying there. Because yeah, there's, especially if it's somebody that's been put in there, they almost feel like it's a spy or, and that's just, I guess maybe it's just human nature. I know even at the higher levels, whenever there was somebody kind of overlooking what you were doing, you're always a little bit apprehensive. So if it was more, initiated from the coaches that, hey, listen, we're having a hard time with, bench management or with this attitude of this kid on the bench, or we're having a hard time with, breaking out of our end, then, they come to you. But yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Okay. So what I've heard from the association, they want you to go to a game a week, 3 games on the weekend with 3 different teams. They didn't mention practices, and my preference is just watching practice and then asking questions. But I think I would change my approach just from hearing what you guys have said here. I just don't think it will work, unless you provide those options and they ask for you or they call for your help. And that's rare and far between. The complaints will start coming down, and that's when you get involved because people are complaining. And I'm just not sure what to do. So, Mike Benelli, you're on, and I'll just give you an update about what we've been talking about. I've made an application to mentor U13 quadrant hockey here, which would be AA, AAA boys, and really reluctant. I put in a proposal, and the role of mentorship, Dominic and Tom have both said the coach has to ask you for what they need. They have to let you know what you might be able to help them with. Have you got any experience in mentorship, Michael?
Yeah, I'm actually doing I'm doing a lot of that now. So I agree. It's the same philosophy I think I give. And congratulations, by the way. That's great. They're really lucky kids. But I think it's the same way when I speak to like private skating and skills instructors, right? About, you need to interview the kid, and I think more importantly, sometimes interview their coach and figure out, what it is that the deficiencies that the kid thinks, their pluses and their minuses, but also what does their coach think, so that, the messages are the same when they go back and forth to their teams. And I think it's the same way with mentoring, teams and individual other, like I do a lot of mentorship of young coaches, and it's really about, okay, where are your pain points? Like, what do you want me to help you with? And what do you think you're good at? and what do you think you need help with? And then, as we go through, usually like week 4, 5, or 6, I can have a little regroup with them and say, well, listen, I think you're actually stronger at this than this, and then there's a real conversation going on there then.
How are you able to make that happen? Like you said, real conversation.
Well, so I just try to ask them, it's almost similar to your mission statement. I mean, I really try to ask them to be, give me an honest assessment of who they are. And most of the coaches that I work with now, I require them, or, I guess it's not required, but it's a strong recommendation that at the end of the year, they do an exit survey with all their parents and their kids, and I do that myself. I mean, sometimes it's pretty brutal, and it's not something I want to hear, but often it's just reinforces the fact that I think I had done a good job with the team overall, and you'll get little snippets of what people didn't like, but overall, I think they understand if you're communicating that way. So I think for me, that's how I do it. I really try to have them give me what their top 3 things are that they want to work on, or what they feel they need, and their top 3 strengths. And then we get together and talk about the fact that, well, I agree or don't agree with that.
Just generalizing here, what are the things you think they need the most help with?
Most of the coaches, the young guys that I work with are being more, are their demeanor, like their body language and their ability to be, coach to not coach to all the deficiencies they see out there. And that's hard for me too. I mean, I think it's hard you guys talk about it all the time. I think it's hard for any coach. I think the biggest thing for me is that they start to understand that, there's a big difference between, being the kid's friend and being the kid's coach. And I do understand that there's a lot of coaches out there. I'm just not that guy. Like, I'm not that coach that's the friend of the kids. That's probably something that I need to work on. But I tend to be less of that. I love communicating, and I'll talk, and I try to open myself up that I can be, have a good relationship with my players. But I just never really want them to think I'm their buddy. And to me, that's just my own way of coaching. I don't work well in there. So I just try to, I think that's, so when I'm with the young guys that I work with, they get especially the ones that get paid and working with these, AAA programs.
Yeah.
The fact that they become friends with the parents and the kids, and, they're kind of hanging out, and, they're at the bar, or they're in a situation where it just becomes too social. I think that's where a lot of them really fall. And that's the main thing I really try to work with them on. There's and the fact that they try to script everything. I think we all, I think when you become a new coach, you want to script everything and feel like the kids aren't, you're screaming and yelling at the kids. And I'm like, well, you're screaming and yelling at them, but you just didn't direct them very well. And, so we try to work on that. And I'm a big believer in just being having pre-planned and set up practices. And I think, in my area where I am, it's 90% of the coaches just don't come to practice prepared. It's like the wing it coach. And that's, something I work on every day.
Who hires you to do what you do?
Right now, I'm go through organization. So actually, I just started a new program with Mike Weaver with Coach Them, and then I do a lot of stuff through the coaches site. But that I actually, through that directors club that I run, most programs will reach out to me and say, hey, listen, we have this crop of new coaches coming in. They're guys and girls that just finished playing pro or college, or maybe they were great high school player back in the day. And they all love hockey. They all can teach hockey. They can all skate and jump over borders and do spinoramas, but they can't. But they really don't know the nuances of coaching. And I wish I had that. Like when I was a young coach, before I had kids, I wish somebody that had children that was a coach to me, because I think it would have made me a much different coach when I was, 23, 24, 25 years old.
how have you found like the feedback on your surveys? Uh, you're obviously maintaining employment doing this, and in your mind, do you feel it's working?
Yeah, I mean, I've been successful at it. I mean, I keep getting calls back from the same organizations, and they, you know, most of the organizations I work with, like all my, I guess if you want to call it clients, are, I don't advertise, so it's all word of mouth, and it's all somebody introducing me to somebody else and saying, "Hey, Mike worked with these three guys last year, and they really had a great, uh, you know, their season ended well." And I'm not talking about wins and losses. I'm just talking about, you know, they didn't have 17 kids quit their team and leave the program in you know, flames. And I think that's, like, to me, again, I'm working really rec programs, mostly programs that don't have the big resources of these huge, like I work with, like, my personal places. I coach with the Connecticut Junior Rangers, which is part of like Mid Fairfield, Connecticut Junior Rangers. This is like it's a it's a big machine, and I tend to not work with those organizations as much as the ones that are run by parents that really, you know, every year there's a new board, and every year they're trying to reinvent the wheel. So I try to be, you know, that 35-year veteran hockey director to them, and then be almost a coaching director to their coaches.
I like what you said about reinvent the wheel, because that's what I found here, and Tom could comment on that, is that you usually have a board that will be there as long as their kids are involved from the age of 13 now up to the age of 18. So you might have the same people on board, but they're going to transition out. One of the things that some boards have done, they've managed to maintain the same presidents for 3 generations of players, which has provided a degree of stability. Some hire, they have every president stay on an extra year to help with that transition, because the problems keep reoccurring, and like you said, Mike, it just recycles. They want to reinvent the system. They've got better ideas. I think there's a better way of doing things. And that's
The new ideas are great, but the problem is it's like it doesn't stick. Like, so somebody will come in, they'll do something for a year, and then you always hear in every organization, "Oh, we tried that and that didn't work." I go, "Well, did you try it in a way where you set it up to fail, or did you try it in a way to set it up to succeed?" And I think that's where I try to come in, and I'm very vulnerable with them about that. I'm like, "Listen, I've made literally every mistake in the book over 30 years. I mean, I've ordered the wrong size jerseys for kids. I've scheduled too many games on Mother's Day. I've, you know, I've set up road trips that were unsuccessful, and, you know, the right hotel." So what I try to do is come in and say, "Listen, these are the kind of things that I've made mistakes in, and you as a board, your job is to make sure that all your kids are kind of loved and that they're learning. My job to you is that I give you the opportunity not to have to keep wondering how to do it, because I'm just going to give you the you know, kind of the secret to the sauce."
Anybody got any comments? Dom, it's interesting being from Canada in the States. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm in a bit of a little bit of a different situation. Obviously, I mean, I'm the board, I'm the president, I'm the everything from top to bottom. So, you know, it's interesting just to, you know, talk about, you know, boards and that. I mean, obviously, I have the school that I have to deal with, and the AD and the president and that, but there's really not much in the way of hockey knowledge, you know, where I'm at. And you know, I'm competing and dealing with, you know, parents that are not educated on, and what their kids needs are. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't have much in the way of comments on what Mike's saying. I just find it interesting. I'm going to need to set up a call with Mike. I think maybe go over some of the details and just on structuring that. But no, it's from the if I look on the minor hockey league side here, it's very, very similar. And you talk about parents that are involved within the board while their kids are involved, and then when their kids leave, then they just pop smoke and they're gone too. And then now it's somebody that's taking over. And unfortunately here there's not that expertise. So there's the mistakes are continually made over and over again, and ultimately it's the kids that end up getting the brunt of the mistakes that are made.
You're muted, Wally.
What are the kids' needs that aren't being fulfilled?
Well, you're talking about the minor hockey league kids? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking what you're going through in your location, which would be minor hockey out here or AAA hockey out here. What are the needs that aren't being fulfilled?
Yeah. Well, part of it is that everybody's a free agent every year. So, if your kid's not, and so part of it is that there's this fear of missing out from all the parties involved. So, kids will be a part of a organization, and then they'll go to their tournaments and they'll do their, whatever they have. And then, somebody will, and I guess what it comes down to is parents not being educated and not having somebody to be able to say, hey, listen, you don't need to go, you don't need to be, running power plays and penalty kills at 11U to have a good program. And so, but they don't know what a good program looks like. And so without having the expertise there, so then it ends up being parents, all they're trying to do is trying to get their kids playing with the best players, and they have the freedom to do that because every year it doesn't matter where you live, you can go. Like, there's literally people that will drive by 2 or 3 rinks to be able to bring their kid to another program where they figure that the 2 and 3 best kids are going to play, just because, and so that's what they end up doing. And so a little bit is just not having the individual to be able to give the parents confidence and be like, listen, we've got this development program, or we have this, in our mind, everybody's going to play, everybody's going to develop, everybody's going to, and everybody's going to mature. And then when they get to this age, when they get to 15, 16 or whatever else have you, then you can make some decisions. But there's there's people that are potentially trying to give that message, but whether they're not qualified or people figure that they know better, and so it's just the kids end up being the ones that really suffer, because then they end up moving around. They're not staying with the same club. They're, the coach isn't good enough. The players they're playing with aren't good enough. It ends up being, I mean, ultimately it really comes down to is the money, right? So then you have the clubs, like, for instance, we don't have tryouts until June, but there's literally literally clubs that are trying to get their ducks in a line in April. Like, the season literally just ended, and now they're, trying to recruit and trying to make promises, and it's a mess. It really is a mess. And so I guess when you ask, what do the kids need? They need somebody that has the knowledge to say, listen, this is, if your kid stays within this program, they'll get what they need from a standpoint of skill development, from a standpoint of social development within the group, and you like have confidence in that we're doing the right thing. And I guess that's ultimately what they don't have, so that it ends up just being, a migration from club to club, depending on who has the best sales pitch for that particular that particular year, or yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
very much, Dominic. You really said it pretty well. I like what you mentioned about doing what's right in terms of skill development socially. Um, I don't know if Daryl's able to talk or not, but Daryl, you were on with us a while ago, and you've been through the minor hockey coaching experience, and now you're at the very top. I wonder if you have anything to add about system coming up the ladder in terms of where these players are going to end up. Many of them not at the highest level, but obviously at the AA and AAA levels, you want to get them scholarships or playing junior hockey, and many of them will play pro down the road. So, Daryl, if you're available, have you got any comments? Okay, Tom Malloy, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just think that I've had experience at various places. Like in Europe, it's a club system, as Dom knows, and Johanny and I set up the program for Austria, and they brought us to Vienna 3 summers, and the club coaches would come, and we had a curriculum like a school. You start at somewhere and you go to somewhere, and we created a curriculum, that they can add to, but so these are the fundamentals: dating, puck handling, et cetera, team play. And that's one aspect. Summer hockey here, spring hockey, is very similar to it is in the United States. It's kind of like a Wild West after the players and that kind of thing, where our organized hockey during the hockey season is like Little League Baseball. You have to play in your area. Like in Calgary, I live in Trails West. Kids have to play in Trails West, and they have different levels. And then we're in the Royals quadrant, which is 1/4 of the city, which is about 400,000 people. And, you have to play there. And then they make some adaptations for kids that get cut or whatever. They can try out at one other organization, if they get cut, and this sort of thing. And I just talked to one of my friends that I coached in Salzburg with, Gene Riley. He just came home from Russia like 2 days ago. So he gave me a call, and they're in the club system, but he said that the biggest problem there is guys want to be the head guys because they make more money, in the club system. So it's hard to get something consistent going there, because all of a sudden the top guy, like, he's the skills coach for their whole organization and tries to do stuff there. So just trying to say every place has its own unique, organization and the problems, and like that part where you guys got to deal with that kids can travel wherever they want, and then a sales pitch to get them to go somewhere else, and that I know I experienced that with this 85ers group. It's, that's guys like Mason and Jeremy and those kind of guys, and they ended up in the NHL. But I mean, the parents, we lost one game a year for 2 years, and the parents were mad because we lost this one game, and Harold Sneps's team beat us in that championship thing in Vancouver 2 years in a row, and and they were upset about that. So really hard to keep people happy, that's for sure.
Okay, I was really glad we had the conversation, because I'm thinking of taking on this mentorship role, and Mike Manelli, I'm really reluctant. It sounds like I'm reluctant because I've just been burnt so many times. I've sort of reached the end of my rope in terms of trying to do something that's going to make a difference anymore because the wheel just keeps spinning. So uh, I think I've put together an application, and I've in my application, which maybe isn't a good sales pitch. I talk about the coaches answering some questions about why are they coaching, what would the players say about them, and it leads to them becoming aware of how they're coaching. And I don't even know if I'll get to the point where I would do the questionnaire, but that's what I did mention to the president. That's the first thing I would want to do before I took the position on, is to see what they would, if they would respond. And if they did, I would follow up with, in a fashion that Tom, you brought up, is beginning to ask questions. You've made them think by um, asking them the question about why they're coaching and how they're coaching and how they perceive it and how the kids might perceive it. And then from there, at some point, I'm hoping to do the mission statement exercise, but I don't know whether that would even come off because that's a top down thing, Tom. And you've got your covenant, you've done your thing, and everybody's got the code of conduct that they follow that they're given by Hockey Canada. And nothing really seems to work because it all gets disjointed. So I'm really at my wit's end here. But hang in there. You're most of you are much younger, and Dom, you're in the trenches big time. I hope things are turning the corner for you at your school. I feel a school setting, having coaches, Tom did for many years in school settings. There's a degree of stability there, but it's not like a private program within a school. It's a little bit different, but I think the ethical nature of why you're coaching, your school would want to emulate that and support you in that regard, doing the right thing at the right time. And